Go for
I
it.
am myself an introvert. So the difference between introvert and extrovert to me is how we perceive our environment that we're in, and also the energy levels. Social interaction is very, very draining for me. And I know that if I'm going to be with lots of people and in new environment specifically, then I have to think about self-care and how am I going to recharge and where am I going to draw that energy back from. Where extroverts, they just look for it, they search it, they try to find the new experiences, they try to find the group of people, and they just feed off that. So that's how I understand the difference between extroverts and introverts.
I agree with that. I think a lot of it is about energy, or where you get your energy from. So I think for me as an introvert, I know that if I want to re-energize myself, then for me that means staying alone and re-energizing myself. But I believe, as if I understand it correctly, then an extrovert will find they can recharge with other people and in the company of others. So I think for me it is about where you recharge your batteries and how you can recharge your batteries.
I am quite extroverted, as you probably realize,
Mhm.
and I must say I do get a buzz. I just get this positive energy when I'm interacting with others. And to me, it's not only necessarily situations when I'm talking to other people, but it's also just being surrounded by them and uh, observing them, just how they interact with each other. To be honest, there are strong points and let's say weaker points of each of those personality types. So it's good to be aware of those things, and it's also good to be aware of the fact that if something is particularly problematic for you because, let's say, of your lifestyle or things that you want to do in life, then you still have opportunity to work on those weaknesses, let's say, and kind of push them a bit over towards where you want to be. And I think that's something good to be aware of as well. And now moving on to the characteristics of extroverts and introverts. Enjoying social settings for extroverts, don't like or need a lot of alone time, thrive around people, have many friends, prefer to talk out problems or questions, outgoing and optimistic, aren't afraid of risk, and is more flexible. While for introvert, it's a bit of a opposite scenario where they prefer working alone, they prefer time to themselves, uh, they are drained by social interactions, which we kind of already spoken about, have a close circle of friends, they are more introspective and curious, they prefer writing over talking, and they have a tendency to zoning out or letting their mind wander away. They feel more rather than express, let's say. What do you feel is the most true for you guys, and how do you actually um, see that reflecting in your own lives?
I like what you said about being stimulated by your internal or external world. I think that's quite an interesting point. And I think everyone will vary. Of course, you said that, it's not a black and white kind of thing. You're either you're introvert or an extrovert. We all have different characteristics of both. But I think for me as an introvert, I would say that I am stimulated by my own internal world, but that's not necessarily meaning I'm not stimulated by others in my external world. I like to have friends, conversations, meet new people, and so on. But there is an aspect where I also am very happy to spend long periods of time just on my own, and will be just thinking of things and playing out scenarios, possibly this kind of thing. And I think then it could be a tendency for overthinking as well. But then, extroverts might have this possibility, this tendency too. But I think that could be quite common amongst introverts, this kind of overthinking, but also being stimulated by their inner world, whatever that is, whether it's being creative, and then that's why they're interested in writing, and then finding that creativity within, because they find that space and that time alone to grow that kind of inner world.
No, I would tend to agree with that. So I really like how you're zooming out, and that is sort of a base position for me, because as an introvert, being overstimulated with external and internal things, that's quite common. So if I have a lot going on, or there's a lot of things, I tend to just try to think about it rather than, you know, um, I don't know how to say it, maybe being more rational about it, but it is something. And I really like about extrovert that the base point is smiling and being happy and being energetic. I just can't I just can't understand it. It's like, it's fantastic. I wish I had that. And I think you can see an extrovert as well. If you just look at someone, they just smile, they beam, they have lots of energy. And that is not to say that an introvert isn't happy. It's just that it doesn't show that way as it was. Yeah.
I think you have a good point there, because it's a lot about expressing your emotions, which doesn't mean that the emotions are not there. It's just if you're an extrovert, you are more likely to just show it to everyone, right? Rather than be a bit more contained in you and feel them.
Absolutely. Yeah, I feel for introverts, it's more like trying to make sense of what's happening and then react. Whereas extroverts, they just react and they just roll with the punches and see where it takes them. For me, I first have to make sense and understand how I feel about it, and then I'm gonna express it to the world.
The points, I like the one that resonates with me is the one about zoning out. So for my own personal life, when I'm socialising with friends, back in the years ago, I would zone out a lot. There's probably two reasons for that. One is what we've already alluded to, is that because as an introvert, or the introverted side of us needs solitude. If you don't get that solitude, then zoning out is almost a way of getting that. So you could be in a group of friends who are having a conversation and you're not there because you're somewhere else. I think the other thing as well is because as an introvert, you've probably got a rich inner life. That's also appealing as well. It's almost a pull factor. So from my point of view, what I've learned over the years is to be mindful of that and having that rest period before you go out and socialise, recharge fully, and then you can actually focus on the outside world, which is what extroverts do really well.
In terms of the strong points for an extrovert, we have ability to think quickly, spontaneousness. They are also, because of that, more prompt to take risks, I guess, and they are more able to express emotions, or expressing emotions comes easier to them, as we already spoken about, and then they interact well with other people. While for introverts is because of their tendency for thinking, they are much more eloquent and thoughtful. They are self-motivated, so that motivation comes from within rather than external factors. They are much more focused and they like to be prepared, so they spend a lot of time for preparation. They are much better listeners, and they focus on the message sent to them. And then they are writers by nature. In terms of weaknesses, we've got for extroverts. They can be seen as self-focused, self-centered, a bit egotistic, I guess, in a way. They can have a tendency of talking too much. Because of the spontaneousness, they can say things without thinking. They have poor listening skills, or tendency to have poor listening skills, and they get bored very easily. While for introverts, it's they pay more attention to other people's opinions. They are highly sensitive. They have quite high levels of anxiety or worry, or they can have those higher levels. They do not like interruptions, and they hate being put on the spot.
I think being quite thoughtful helps, and getting clear messages in your mind about what you want to say is important, because obviously that's your substance of the speech, for example. But I would also say that probably from a more of a weakness point of view, again, I'm talking about my introverted side of my nature, because I do have an extroverted side as well. And I would say from my introverted side of my nature, probably a strong weakness is I don't really like being put on the spot. So I do struggle at things like table topics, which is obviously our impromptu speaking.
Yes, as a strength, preparation I think is a big thing. So if I have to deliver a speech, then I will prepare it a lot. I'll practice it a lot, and I'll gain a lot of comfort knowing that I've memorized the entire thing and that I know what to do. So I think for me as an introvert, it's important that I know exactly what I'm doing, and then I feel more confident in delivering it. So I think the good quality about that is I'm definitely prepared. There's no doubt about that. I'll be prepared. I won't just risk winging anything. I'll always make sure that I have I've prepared well, that I'm comfortable with it, and I'll go over it again and again and again until I feel happy with it. But then on the weakness side of things, I do lack spontaneity. And that's something that I'd really like to work on. And I do believe that you can improve your level of spontaneity. And that's what I learned from joining Toastmasters, because I didn't actually realize that part of Toastmasters was the table topics. When I first saw that, I thought, okay, maybe I don't want to join this club after all, because actually it really, really frightened me. And I just thought, there's just no way, I can't. And I learned a lot from that experience, because every time I did it, I would go blank. There would be such levels of panic. I'd always go blank, and I'd just be standing there. But then for whatever reason, the way it works is amazing, because you just take a deep breath and then you start speaking. You don't need to know every single word. Whereas my introverted self will think, no, I need to know every single word, before I start speaking. But that's not how life works. You can just be having a conversation. You never know every single word you're going to say before you just have a chat to someone. So it was interesting how it worked, that once I started speaking, this ideas came, and that I didn't even know I was going to say certain things, but one word came after another, and then another idea. And before you know it, you've just given an impromptu speech. And I think that was extraordinary. It was such a teaching. It showed me that you can actually think and speak at the same time.
Introverts are more likely to be highly sensitive. And what that basically means, the way I understand it and the way I perceive it, and that's what perceive it is how your external world affects your internal feelings or internal world. So for me, to go to new unknown places, that is a situation which will evoke this high sensitivity, because I have all of these possibilities, and they're endless, because there is this room, there is all these people, there might be loud noises, there might be lights, things like that. There might be a program that I don't understand what's happening, or I'm not familiar with it, and that's what it is. It's the lack of familiarity, and then it's very, very draining for a highly sensitive people to be in such situations, and it really evokes fight or flight response.
And I don't really care that much about the light, or I don't get that stress if let's say something is not working for me. I can be quite work around that. But for me, my brain, just the way it works, is just everywhere, and it just jumps from one idea to another. And in order to be able to manage that, I have to be very organized, because if not, I will just get lost in the detail.
For me, prepared speech, the most difficult thing I find is eye contact. And I know that sounds very simple. It's not even being prepared and know what to say. It's nothing of that. It's eye contact and it's gestures. So I often find myself looking up, around, and everywhere else but the audience. So I have to be very conscious about that. And something that I found for myself is because when I see everyone else looking at me, I have that panic feeling, growing. And I know from myself that if I talk to someone one-to-one, I have no issues at all. I can just talk, I'm fine. If I talk to two people, that's a crowd. That's too many people already. So I try to use that, and I try to find a friendly face in the audience. And let's face it, Toastmaster, it's a friendly audience. It's a great place for an introvert. It's a great place to have that positive feedback. So, and I just look at one person and I just talk to that one person, and then I look at somebody else, and then I talk to that person for a little while, and then I move somewhere. It's not perfect, but that's the strategy I have, and it's seemed to be starting to work.
For me, I have a lot of things that I do when I'm speaking, which I hope manage a lot of my weaknesses, if you like. So when I'm going onto stage, I always focus on my posture. Think, is it open? Without actually having any thoughts going in my head, I'm just focusing on my posture, tuning in about, is my posture open? Am I breathing freely? That type of thing. And then I'll deliver my speech. Of course, the danger with focusing on the posture is you're not focused on the external world. So what I also have to do is remind myself every so often to look at different parts of the audience and different parts of the stage, so that I'm not too much tuned out from the audience. Because I think my biggest danger is if I've got a lot of ideas to express, I can almost tune out the audience and be so full of my own ideas. I'm not looking at people to say, am I going too slowly, or do I need to go a bit faster? So I don't believe I've fully mastered that, but by just disciplining myself to do those glances across the audience members, I think hopefully I'll get there.
I think for me, the biggest challenge is definitely managing nerves. And so there are a number of different things I do for that. I have a regular meditation practice that overall just helps keep me calm. But also I think it's about starting in a safe environment. So speaking in front of Toastmasters, then that's brilliant, because it's obviously a positive environment, a safe environment, and a very encouraging one. So you do feel supported in the environment. And I think that's quite an important thing, just to be clear on what kind of environment you want to actually start speaking in. And that helps me to manage my own nerves. But another thing is actually choosing my topics. So I try not to choose anything too complicated where I'm going to be stuck in my head. I try to think about the audience and just think about what I want to share, so I stay in my heart. And then when I say my heart, it's just like I just have something to share from my heart to your heart. Then I feel just very happy in that moment, because it's just something I'd like to share. And then when I'm speaking from my heart, I don't have to worry too much about other things. I think the worries tend to go, because you're just making that emotional connection. You're just enjoying sharing something. And that overall helps a lot as well.
Being put on the spot is one of the worst things that can ever happen to me as an introvert. So then my sort of inquisitive side said, okay, so this is the problem, how am I going to solve it? And this was one of the ways. And over the time, I found a way. I'm not 100% there, but I found what works for me is, when the question is asked, instead of focusing on a question and try to find the correct and proper answer, as we were taught in a school system and education system, focus on a word that and just go with that. So let's say someone would ask, what's your favorite book? Now maybe I forget what my favorite, because I'm being in that situation, I completely blank out. So I just focus on the word book, and I try to talk about that, and I maybe try to talk about a printing press and how that changed changed the history of how we learn things. Maybe then I move on to my kids and what books they like, because that's easier for me to talk about somebody else than myself in a way. And by that time, 1 minute is over and I'm free to go. Things like practice. So I literally practice almost every day a table topic. when I'm in the car. So I drop the kids off. Now it doesn't happen so much because, you know, we're in this situation, but I drop the kids off. Then I have a sheet printed off with questions, and I record myself as I'm driving, and then I play it back. It's little things, but it really helps.